Sarah Martinez stood in line at the busy coffee shop, her sleeveless summer dress revealing the intricate tattoo that covered most of her left arm. The detailed artwork showed military badges, dates, and names woven together with American flags and eagle wings. She had grown used to the stares over the years, but today felt different. The morning rush at Joe's Diner was particularly crowded, filled with business people grabbing their usual caffeine fix before heading to nearby offices. Sarah worked as a nurse at the Veterans Hospital just down the street, and this was her regular stop before her shift. Behind her in line, 3 well-dressed women in their 50s whispered among themselves, not bothering to lower their voices much. "Look at all that ink," one said with obvious disgust. "What kind of person does that to their body?" "Probably some gang member," another added, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Or one of those military wannabes who thinks tattoos make them look tough." The third woman giggled. "My daughter wanted a small butterfly tattoo last year, and I told her absolutely not. Nice girls don't mark themselves up like that. It's so trashy." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes forward. She had heard it all before. People saw the tattoos and immediately made assumptions about who she was, what she stood for, and what kind of life she lived. They never bothered to ask about the meaning behind the artwork, the stories each symbol told, or the pain that had inspired every line and color. "Excuse me, miss." One of the women tapped Sarah on the shoulder. Sarah turned around, hoping they were going to apologize for their rude comments. Instead, the woman smiled condescendingly. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but what possessed you to do that to yourself? I mean, you're actually quite pretty under all that." The other women laughed, thinking they were being clever. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. But before she could respond, the woman continued, "I'm sure you think it looks cool now. But what are you going to do when you're older? No respectable job will hire someone who looks like they belong in a biker bar, and good luck finding a decent husband who wants to be seen with that." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her purse. "Actually, I'm a registered nurse," she said quietly. "I work at the VA hospital." "Oh, well, that makes sense," the first woman said with a knowing look. "Those places probably have to hire anyone these days. But still, wouldn't you rather look professional?" The conversation was drawing attention from other customers. Some looked uncomfortable with the women's behavior, while others seemed curious about the confrontation. Sarah noticed a few people taking out their phones, probably hoping to catch some drama for social media. An elderly man in a worn baseball cap turned from the counter with his coffee. "Ladies, maybe you should mind your own business," he said gruffly. "We're just having a conversation," one of the women replied defensively. "Free country. Last I checked. If she didn't want attention, maybe she shouldn't have turned herself into a walking comic book." This comment brought more laughter from the group, and Sarah felt smaller with each passing moment. She was used to dealing with prejudice in professional settings, but having strangers mock her so openly in public was particularly humiliating. The barista, a young man with several piercings, looked sympathetic but seemed unsure whether to intervene. The line behind them was growing longer, and the tension in the small space was becoming palpable. "You know what the real problem is?" the most vocal woman continued, clearly enjoying the attention she was getting. "Young people today have no respect for themselves. They think these trashy tattoos make them special, but all it does is show they make poor decisions. I bet her parents are ashamed." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She thought about leaving, just walking out and going somewhere else for coffee. But something inside her refused to be driven away by these cruel strangers who knew nothing about her life or her choices. Just then, the door chimed as another customer entered the already crowded shop. The man was tall and distinguished-looking, wearing a well-tailored suit jacket despite the warm weather. His graying hair was cut in a precise military style, and his posture spoke of years of discipline and command. He surveyed the scene quickly, his experienced eyes taking in the confrontation developing in the coffee line. The women were still making comments about Sarah's appearance, their voices growing louder and more confident as other customers watched the spectacle. "Some people just have no class," one of them said, loud enough for the entire shop to hear. "In my day, Ladies knew how to present themselves properly. The newcomer stepped closer, his face stern and his presence commanding immediate attention. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Excuse me, ladies." The three women turned toward him, their expressions changing as they took in his professional appearance and confident demeanor. They clearly assumed he was going to support their position. "Is there a problem here?" he asked calmly, his steely blue eyes moving from them to Sarah and back again. The tallest of the three women smiled at the distinguished gentleman, assuming he would be an ally in their criticism. "Oh, hello there." "No real problem. Just discussing how unfortunate it is when young people make such poor choices about their appearance." She gestured toward Sarah's tattooed arm. "I mean, look at that. It's just so inappropriate for a young woman to mark herself up like that." We were trying to give her some friendly advice about how it might affect her future prospects. The man's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "Friendly advice," he repeated slowly, his tone carefully controlled. "Exactly," the second woman chimed in, emboldened by what she perceived as support. "I have a daughter about her age, and I would be mortified if she did something like that to herself. It just screams poor judgment and lack of self-respect." Sarah stood frozen, wondering if this well-dressed stranger was about to join in the criticism. She had encountered this before. People who looked respectable on the surface, but shared the same narrow-minded views about anyone who didn't fit their definition of acceptable appearance. "Tell me," the man said, stepping closer to examine Sarah's tattoo more carefully. "What exactly do you see when you look at her arm?" The women exchanged glances, clearly pleased that he was showing interest in their perspective. "Well, obviously just a bunch of random military-looking symbols," the first woman said dismissively. "Probably trying to look tough or rebellious. These young people watch too many action movies and think tattoos make them look cool." "Random symbols," the man repeated, his voice growing quieter but somehow more intense. Other customers had stopped their conversations to watch the unfolding scene. The third woman, feeling confident now, laughed and added, "I'm sure she couldn't even tell you what half of those military things mean. It's all for show. Real military people wouldn't waste their time with someone who plays dress-up with tattoos." The man turned to Sarah, his expression softening slightly. "Miss, would you mind if I took a closer look at your tattoo?" Sarah nodded, extending her arm slightly. She noticed his eyes moving carefully over each element of the design, and something in his demeanor told her he understood exactly what he was seeing. "Ma'am," he said, turning back to the women, his voice now carrying a sharp edge, "I need to correct some serious misconceptions you seem to have." The first woman looked confused. "Misconceptions? Those aren't random symbols," he said clearly. "What you're looking at is a memorial tattoo. Those are unit patches, service ribbons, and deployment locations. Those dates you can see? Those mark tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan." The coffee shop had grown quiet, with even the barista stopping his work to listen. The man continued, his voice growing stronger. "Those names written in script among the eagles? Those are fallen soldiers, brothers and sisters in arms who didn't make it home. Each one represents someone who made the ultimate sacrifice for your freedom to stand here and voice your ignorant opinions." The women's faces began to change as the weight of his words sank in. "You see," he said, his eyes never leaving theirs, "what you've been mocking for the past 10 minutes isn't some random decoration or attempt to look cool. It's a living memorial. It's a way of carrying the memory of heroes everywhere she goes, ensuring their sacrifice is never forgotten." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes, but this time they weren't from humiliation. Someone finally understood. The man gestured toward specific elements of the tattoo. "That's the 82nd Airborne patch. Those are deployment ribbons for Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. That eagle is holding a Purple Heart symbol, which means she was wounded in action while serving her country." The silence in the coffee shop was deafening. Several customers had moved closer to listen, and more than one person looked ashamed of having initially agreed with the women's harsh words. "Now," the man said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, Would you like to continue telling this combat veteran what she should do with her body? Would you like to keep explaining to someone who bled for your freedom how she should look to meet your approval? The three women stood speechless, their faces red with embarrassment and shock. The first woman opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. An older gentleman near the counter spoke up. "Thank you for your service, miss." His words broke the spell, and several other customers began nodding and offering their own expressions of gratitude and respect. But the distinguished man wasn't finished. He turned back to the three women, who were now looking around frantically, as if searching for an escape route. "You know what the truly tragic part of this is?" he asked them. "You spent all this time making assumptions about her character based on her appearance, never bothering to learn anything about who she actually is or what she's been through." The barista stepped forward. "Miss, your coffee is on the house today. Actually, it's on the house anytime you're here." Sarah managed a small smile and nodded her thanks, still overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. The man looked at his watch, then back at the three women. "I have one more thing to show you. If you're interested in learning something today, instead of just spreading judgment." Without waiting for their response, he began to remove his suit jacket. As the man removed his suit jacket, the entire coffee shop fell into stunned silence. Both of his arms were covered in elaborate military tattoos, even more extensive than Sarah's. The artwork was clearly the work of a master tattoo artist, depicting decades of military service, multiple deployments, and countless fallen comrades. The three women gasped audibly. Their faces went from red with embarrassment to pale with shock. "My name is Colonel James Morrison, United States Marine Corps. Retired?" he said calmly, rolling up his sleeves to reveal even more detailed work. "I served for 32 years, including 6 deployments to combat zones. Like this young lady, my tattoos tell the story of my service and honor those who didn't make it home." He pointed to a section on his right arm. "This memorial wall here? It contains the names of 43 Marines who served under my command and died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Every birthday, every holiday, every Memorial Day, I remember each one of them because their names are permanently written on my body." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes as she recognized the profound similarity in their experiences. She had never met another veteran who had chosen to memorialize their service and their fallen friends in the same way she had. Colonel Morrison continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You see, ladies, those tattoos you were mocking represent something you clearly don't understand. They represent honor, sacrifice, brotherhood, and the kind of commitment most people will never be asked to make." He turned to Sarah. "What unit did you serve with, soldier?" "Army medic, sir. 101st Airborne Division. 3 tours in Afghanistan," Sarah replied, standing a little straighter. "A medic," the colonel repeated, addressing the coffee shop. "Do you know what that means?" "It means while other soldiers were focused on fighting the enemy, she was running into gunfire to save lives. Medics have one of the most dangerous jobs in combat because they have to expose themselves to rescue wounded soldiers." He looked directly at the three women. The purple heart symbol in her tattoo means she was wounded while saving someone else's life. She bled on foreign soil so that people like you could stand in this coffee shop and speak freely, even when what you choose to say is ignorant and hurtful. The first woman finally found her voice. We didn't know. We're sorry. We just assumed." "You assumed," Colonel Morrison interrupted firmly. "You looked at external appearances and made judgments about character, service, and worth. You decided that tattoos meant poor decision-making, instead of considering they might represent honor and sacrifice." An older woman near the window spoke up. "My grandson is deployed in Afghanistan right now. I had no idea that tattoos could mean something so meaningful." She looked at Sarah with newfound respect. "Thank you for your service, and for helping take care of our boys over there." The barista set Sarah's coffee on the counter. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner. My brother just got back from his second deployment, and he's been struggling. Would it be okay if I gave him your name? He might benefit from talking to someone who understands." Sarah nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "Of course. I work at the VA hospital. We have support groups for veterans dealing with adjustment issues. Colonel Morrison put his suit jacket back on, but left his sleeves rolled up so his tattoos remained visible. You know what the real tragedy is here? This young woman probably deals with this kind of judgment regularly. People see her tattoos and immediately assume negative things about her character, never knowing they're looking at a hero. He turned to address the entire coffee shop. I've been retired for 5 years now, and I work as a consultant for a major corporation downtown. I wear long sleeves to work every day, not because I'm ashamed of my tattoos, but because I got tired of having to educate people about what they really mean. The three women looked increasingly uncomfortable as other customers began to stare at them with obvious disapproval. Sarah, Colonel Morrison said, extending his hand. It was an honor to meet you. Keep wearing those tattoos with pride. They tell a story that deserves to be seen and remembered. Sarah shook his hand firmly. Thank you, sir. I was starting to think about covering them up more often, but you've reminded me why I got them in the first place. Never hide your service, he said firmly. The problem isn't your tattoos. The problem is people who are too quick to judge and too slow to learn. As the colonel prepared to leave, one of the women who had been criticizing Sarah stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, I owe both of you an apology. We were completely wrong, and we're ashamed of how we acted. Don't apologize to me, he replied. Apologize to her. She's the one you hurt with your words, and more importantly, learn from this. Next time you see someone who looks different from what you expect, remember this moment. Remember that you don't know their story. The woman turned to Sarah with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the sacrifices you've made. I promise I'll never make assumptions like that again. Sarah accepted the apology graciously, though the hurt from their earlier words still lingered. As Colonel Morrison walked toward the door, he stopped and addressed the coffee shop one final time. Everyone here learned something today about the danger of judging people by their appearance. Sarah's tattoos aren't decorations or fashion statements. They're a testament to courage, service, and the price of freedom. He looked directly at the three women. The next time you see someone with tattoos, especially military-themed ones, remember that you might be looking at someone who risked everything for your freedom. Show them the respect they've earned. After he left, the atmosphere in the coffee shop remained subdued. Sarah finished preparing her coffee, aware that every person there was now looking at her with completely different eyes. The elderly man in the baseball cap approached her as she headed for the door. Miss, I'm a Korean War veteran. I want you to know that seeing young people like you carry on the tradition of service gives an old soldier hope. As Sarah walked to work that morning, she reflected on how quickly everything had changed. In the span of 20 minutes, she had gone from being humiliated and judged to being recognized and honored for her service. But more than that, she realized she had found an ally in Colonel Morrison, someone who understood not just the sacrifice behind her tattoos, but the daily challenge of living with visible reminders of service in a society that often misunderstood their meaning. Her tattoos would continue to draw stares and questions, but now she felt stronger in her conviction to wear them proudly. They were her armor, her memorial, and her reminder that some things are worth fighting for, even when the battle comes from unexpected places, like a busy coffee shop on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The encounter had taught everyone present a valuable lesson about the assumptions we make and the stories we carry, often hidden beneath the surface of what others can see.